Alright, so we're back in the garage with Kev's BWS, and today we're going to be looking at his torque driver. And the reason we're going to fix it is that the torque driver has worn to the point where it feels like you could quite literally hit a flat spot in your carb, or that, you know, it's poor fueling. But what happens is the torque driver wears a valley, and then you can't kind of overcome the valley, and it feels like you're in a bit of a dip, which exactly is the case. There's the apprentice. He is shortly going to remove all of those Allen bolts around the transmission cover, and then we'll pull the damn thing apart. So there we go. Kev's spinning those little M6 Allens off. Another little top tip. KFC mash and gravy tub. Keep all your bits in one place. Alright, so there we go. Cover is off. We're going to first spin off that 17mm nut on the Variator, followed by yet another 17 on the torque driver, and then we're good to go. Kevin's rather fortunate, he still has that little clip that keeps the rear brake cable, well, not that you have a front brake cable, but it keeps that from scuffing along the back wheel. Alright, so that's how I get the Variator off, is I have a little oil filter wrench that then locates around the Variator, and I'll use a little transmission bolt there as well to keep it tight. Alright, so you can see the wear on the Variator, so we'll take some wet and dry sandpaper and just clean up the faces while we're in here, and we'll also re-grease where that bush is, make sure that it spins nice and freely. Alright, so Kev's pulled off the torque driver, and that's actually mine because his worn one is already stripped apart, but I've made a homemade tool to hold the clutch in that, which works rather well. So what we're going to do now is get this massive 30, how many is it? It's a 41mm nut. So we'll take that off shortly and show you what's in there. Okay, so that's my torque driver. That's Kevin's old one that we're going to redo. And Kevin's got 1,500 RPM springs in the torque and the clutch. So we'll swap these over to his and reassemble with all decent Yamaha parts very shortly. Okay, so that's the worn torque driver slot. As you can see, it should be a smooth, constant size. This is worn within an inch of its life, so you can imagine that pin then rides up into that valley and then gets stuck there, and it feels like you have a badly fueled bike, but it's not. It's a mechanical flat spot. Okay, new Yamaha parts. We've got 2 O-rings for the torque driver. There's the torque driver. The O-rings go in the bottom slot and that top slot there, followed by 2 new oil seals which go top and bottom of the torque driver, followed by 2 new pins. Alright, so the oil seals are in on either side of the torque driver, and Kev is just giving a bit of grease to where those little oil rings go. Obviously with sharp metal edges it can destroy very fragile O-rings, so just going to give it some lube and slide them on. Okay, busy packing in grease. On the inside of the torque driver, you see that slot there? That is currently partially filled with grease. On the reverse, filled it with grease. So of course, once you put the male section in there, it'll smear all that grease into the crevices as well, and into the oil seals. So yeah, grease it. Kevin's just deglazing the clutch pads. They get really shiny. So yeah, just make sure there's a nice mating surface. It's just some 1200 sandpaper. And there's Kevin's torque driver. Reassembled, re-greased, smash a bit of fresh grease on that roller bearing inside there. Okay, torque driver is reassembled back on the bike with Kevin's 1500 RPM spring kit. We're now going to torque that big fat nut, which is 15 newtons. So torque wrench is out with that 41 socket, and off we go. Okay, now the bell's going back on. That little 17mm is 44 newtons, so we'll torque that up. Right, so best practice is when you're in there, do it right. So Kevin's giving his Variator a bit of a clean. Given my driveway is not the most sterile environment, but it beats being in a swamp. Hey, Kev.
Yeah.
Okay, so Kev has migrated from the swamp to the workbench. Everything's getting a clean. The bush, both halves of the Variator, the rollers, the sliders, everything is brand new, ready for assembly. Kev's going to re-grease the inside of the Variator as well. Similar process to what we did for the torque driver. Some high heat grease. Yeah, smash that in there. Alright, so that circular thing there with the 3 screws, that is the starter clutch. When it's all apart, good practice is to pull that out, give it a blast with carb cleaner, because belt dust and grease gets in there and stops it from functioning. So good practice, give it a clean. There's Kev doing final assembly, putting the transmission cover back on. We torqued the Variator back on after cleaning. Again, 43 Newton meters. The front and the rear are within a Newton meter of each other, so I'll just leave my torque wrench at one constant setting, and that's it. Right, Kev, so what are we doing today?
I don't know. I forgot. Stop.